Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi. An old man came and sat in the hall. Maharshi was reading Sharma's Sanskrit recension of Arunachala Akshara Manimalai, the first of the 5 hymns to Arunachala. The man asked softly, "It is said that realization is beyond expression, and expression always fails to describe the realization. How is it?" Maharshi, the point has been mentioned in Arunachala Ashtakam, a verse 3, where it is admitted that although the expression of realization is impossible, still its existence is indicated. Soon after, there were visible signs of emotion in the man. His breath was deep and hard, and he fell on the floor, prostrating humbly, and got up only after 1 or 2 minutes. Remaining calm a brief while, he left the place. Evidently, the man had some illumination. He sought confirmation from Maharshi, who responded fittingly. He found confirmation and humbly and feelingly acknowledged the divine intercession on his behalf. A question was asked about the Upanishadic passage. The Supreme Spirit is subtler than the subtlest and larger than the largest. Maharshi replied, "Even the structure of the atom has been found by the mind. Therefore, mind is subtler than the atom. That which is behind the mind, namely, the individual soul, is subtler than the mind." Further, the Tamil saint Manikyavachakar has said of the specks dancing in a beam of sunlight that if each represents a universe, the whole sunlight will represent the Supreme Being. 19th January 1935. Mr. Douglas Anley, also called Mr. Grant Duff, an aristocratic English gentleman, 70 years old, nephew of a former governor of Madras, an author and a poet formerly attached to the British legation in Athens, Paris, and The Hague, had come to Madras as a guest of Government House. He came to see Maharshi with a letter of introduction from Paul Brunton. Next day, he returned and remained a little less than an hour in the hall. On both days, practically no words were exchanged, only gaze meeting gaze. His habits are abstemious. He remained without food for any kind till 1 p.m. and then lunches. He is said to have coffee and biscuits in the evening and retires without any further food. He has been a bachelor all along, walks a few miles a day on an empty stomach, speaks little, and is very graceful in his movements. His voice is low and soft, and his words appear to come from the heart. He has friends among whom might be counted the late Sir John Woodruff, Sir Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, and Professor Thomas, Sanskrit professor in Oxford University. He expressed a desire to hear the Vedas. On Monday, a letter arrived from Riga, and questions therein happened to coincide with the questions the European visitor had asked relating to the existence of departed souls and how best to serve them. The reply sent to Riga was sent out to him. Tamil songs from Maharshi's Truth Revealed and the Vedas were repeated in his presence. He considered the recitations magnificent. He came the next afternoon and, to the wonder of others, had an experience on the previous night which he repeated to Maharshi. It was that he had seen something like an electric light within himself in the heart center on the right side. And he added further that he had seen the sun shining within Maharshi smiled a little and then had a translation of Atma Vidya, or self-knowledge, read out to him, wherein there is a cryptic saying that realization consists in reaching the Atman, which is the expanse of consciousness as distinguished from the mind, which is the expansion of Chittayoman. This explanation appealed to him. Speaking of him later, Maharshi remarked, "Just think of an old man of 70 not choosing to live peacefully in his own house on the income he had earned. How intense has been his earnestness that he has left his native land, dared a sea voyage of 6,000 miles, and faced the hardship of long railway journeys in a foreign land, ignorant of the language, undergoing the vicissitudes of a lonely life, submitting to the inclemency of a hot climate, in surroundings uncongenial and unaccustomed to him. He could have been happy in his own house. It is his longing for internal peace that has brought him here." Quite so. The intensity of his earnestness is revealed by his illuminating experiences here within 4 days of his arrival, people say. With regard to the question concerning departed souls, so long as a man identifies himself with his gross body, the thought materialized as gross manifestations must be revealed to him. Because his body is imagined to have originated from another physical being, the other exists as truly as his own body. Having existed here once, it certainly survives death because the offspring is still here and feels he has been born of the other. Under these circumstances, the other world is true, and the departed souls are benefited by prayers offered for him. On the other hand, considered in a different way, the one reality is the self from whom has sprung the ego, which contains within itself the seeds of predispositions acquired in the previous births. The self illuminates the ego, the predispositions, and also the gross senses, whereupon the predispositions appear to the senses to have materialized as the universe and become perceptible to the ego, the reflection of the self. The ego identifies itself with the body and so loses sight of the self, and the result of this inadvertence is dark ignorance and the misery of the present life. The fact of the ego arising from the self and forgetting it is birth. So it may be said that the birth of the individual has killed the mother. The present desire to regain one's mother is in reality the desire to regain the self, which is the same thing as realizing oneself or the death of the ego. This is surrender unto the mother, so she may live eternally. Maharshi then read out from the Tamil version of Yoga Vashishta the story of Dirgha Tapasi, who had 2 sons, Punya and Papa. After the death of the parents, the younger one mourned the loss, and the elder brother consoled him as follows: "Why do you mourn the loss of our parents? I shall tell you where they are. They are only within ourselves and are ourselves. For the life current has passed through innumerable incarnations, births and deaths, pleasures and pains, etc., just as the water current in a river flows over rocks, pits, sands, elevations, and depressions on its way, but still the current is unaffected. Again, the pleasures and pains, births and deaths, are like undulations on the surface of seeming water in the mirage of the ego. The only reality is the self, from where the ego appears and runs through thoughts which manifest themselves as the universe, and in which the mothers and fathers, friends and relatives appear and disappear. They are nothing but manifestations of the self, so that one's parents are not outside the self. So there is no reason to mourn. Learn it, realize it, and be happy. 24th January 1935. Mr. W. Y. Evans Wentz, an English research scholar of Oxford University, brought a letter of introduction from Mr. Brunton and arrived on a visit. He was tired after his journey and required rest. He is quite accustomed to Indian ways of living, having visited this country several times. He has learned the Tibetan language and helped in the translation of the Book of the Dead and the Life of Milarepa, the greatest of the Tibetan yogis, and the third book on the Tibetan secret doctrines. In the afternoon, he began to ask a few questions. They related to yoga. He wanted to know if it was right to kill animals such as tigers, deers, etc., and use the skin for yoga posture or asana. Maharshi: the mind is the tiger or the deer. Devotee: if everything be illusion, then one can take lives? Maharshi: to whom is illusion? Find that out. In fact, everyone is a killer of the self, Atma Hanaha, every moment of his life. Devotee: which asana is the best? Maharshi: any asana or posture, possibly Sukhasana, but that is immaterial for Gnana, the path of knowledge. Devotee: does posture indicate the temperament? Yes, replied Maharshi. What are the properties and effects of tiger skin, wool or deer skin, etc.? Maharshi: some have found them out and related them in yoga books. They correspond to conductors and non-conductors of magnetism, etc. But it is all immaterial for the path of knowledge or Gnanamarga. Posture really means location and steadfastness in the self. It is internal. The others refer to external positions. Devotee: what time is most suitable for meditation? Maharshi: what is time? Tell me what it is. Maharshi: time is only an idea. There is only the reality. Whatever you think of it, it looks like that. If you call it time, it is time. If you call it existence, it is existence, and so on. After calling it time, you divide it into days and nights, months, years, hours, minutes, etc. Time is immaterial for the path of knowledge. But some of these rules and disciplines are good for beginners. Devotee: what is Gnanamarga? Maharshi: concentration of mind is in a way common to both knowledge and yoga. Yoga aims at the union of the individual with the universal, the reality. This reality cannot be new. It must exist even now, and it does exist. Therefore, the path of knowledge tries to find out how viyoga or separation came about. Separation is from the reality only. Devotee: what is illusion? Maharshi: to whom is the illusion? Find it out. Then illusion will vanish. Generally, people want to know about illusion and do not examine to whom it is. It is foolish. Illusion is outside and unknown, but the seeker is considered to be known and is inside. Find out what is immediate, intimate, instead of trying to find out what is distant and unknown. Devotee: does Maharshi advise any physical posture for the Europeans? Maharshi: it may be advisable. However, it must be clearly understood that meditation is not prohibited in the absence of asanas or prescribed times or in any accessories of the kind. Devotee: does Maharshi have any particular method to impart to the Europeans in particular? Maharshi replied, in accordance to the mental equipment of the individual. There is indeed no hard and fast rule. Mr. Evans Wentz began to ask questions mostly relating to yoga preliminaries, all of which Maharshi replied that they are aids to yoga, which is itself an aid to self-realization, the goal of all. End of Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi.